All right. We're just going to go ahead and start, and if other people come, they can come. So I had you guys, I had you look at a warm-up question. I'm just going to go ahead and I'll share my screen really quick. So this is going to require a little of maybe you speaking. It's a little interactive type thing. But the warm-up question was what's right here. So just describing what you know about the Constitution. What is it? Why is it important? What's the difference between it and the Declaration? And then who wrote it? What rights do you think it gives us? What rights does it not give us? So it's okay to be wrong. It's okay not to know, but I am going to ask you to talk. If you want to turn on your camera, that would also be cool so I can see who's talking, but up to you. So what is the Constitution? Does anyone think they have an idea?
The Constitution is basically laws and principles that make up a nation.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good short version of it. I'm gonna write some of this stuff down. If you have something to write with, something to write on, that would be very helpful. Because I'm just gonna put a few things down here just to make sure we're all on the same page. So, all right. So you said laws and principles that make up a nation. I definitely think you're right. The Constitution is kind of the set. It is kind of the set of laws that make up our country. Whoops. Anybody know anything else about it? Sorry if it's a little blurry. I'm trying to clear it up. But what the heck? Can anyone see what that says at all?
I think so.
I'm trying to make it clear, but it's not wanting to cooperate with me. So yeah, it's kind of like it's a set of laws that help make our country up. More specifically, it is what we're going to call the supreme law of the land. And I think I mentioned this in a video I had you guys watch, but pretty much what that means is that the Constitution, like, it is the rule. Like if another, like if local government or state government or even federal government wanted to make a law, like for instance, let's say they wanted to make, like a local government wanted to make a law that said you can't speak badly about the mayor. Under our current Constitution, there's a Bill of Rights, and one of it is that you have freedom of speech. So that law wouldn't be legal because it kind of disagrees with what the Constitution says. So if someone makes a law that doesn't match up with what the Constitution says is allowed, it's not legal. Like, this is the most important law document that we have. It is more important than everything else, and nothing can disagree with it. And if it does, then it can be contested in court and won't be legal. So moving back here, what else do we know? Do we know why it's important, especially now that I've talked about that?
It's like the separation of power with the government, ain't it?
Yeah, it does. It formally separates our power into a judicial branch, an executive branch, which is the president, and then the congressional branch, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. Kaylin's right, saying that it helps keep America orderly, gives us our basic rights. Anyone know where our basic rights are listed in the Constitution? There's a part of it that's just about your basic rights, called the Bill of Rights. Um, and it's at the end. It's the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. And another thing I'm going to write down here, and sorry to keep switching back and forth, but it's really the only way I think I can really do it effectively. So the first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. You might be familiar with some of them, you might not. But does anyone know what this word amend means?
Maybe to like kind of fix or whatever.
Fix, kind of, sort of, maybe. It actually means to change. So the first 10 amendments, they weren't initially in the Constitution. So they're the first 10 changes to the Constitution, which is important just to note that like it can be changed. It's a living document. People might have had an idea about what they wanted it to be at the time, but it can be changed. There's a process by which we can make changes to the Constitution. So looking back at what else you had to answer, anyone know the difference between it and the Declaration of Independence?
The Declaration of Independence and Constitution are different because doesn't the Declaration of Independence, it like talks about rights and it set us free from England, and then the Constitution talks about laws and the basic rights of citizens?
Yeah, exactly. And then I think Kaylin just said the same thing. The Declaration, and I'm going to write this down, is just what you guys said. The Declaration is pretty much saying, this is what we want. We want everyone, we think we want to live in a country where everyone is, born free and equal. It has certain unalienable rights. And we don't want to be under a tyrannical government anymore. This is what we want. And then the Constitution is more, how are we going to do that? So like in practice, what is it going to look like? So this is how we're going to do it. So, I mean, if you're really thinking about it, the Declaration doesn't actually do anything. It's just a letter. It's just a breakup letter, essentially. It doesn't actually form the government. It doesn't make any laws. Some people look back at it for some of our values, especially the parts about, unalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness and stuff. But as far as like any legal stuff, it doesn't do anything. The Constitution is where we get all of that stuff from. So this is how we're gonna do it. So Declaration is what we want. The Constitution is how our country is actually gonna get there. Is kind of the idea. Anyone know who wrote it?
Was it James Madison?
Oh man, that's great. Someone's been doing some research. Yes, it was James Madison. He ends up being president, but he is the father of the Constitution. And then, did we have any other questions? What rights does it give us, and what rights does it not give us? Anyone know any rights that it does give us? And you might have to look back to the Bill of Rights for that.
Does it give us the rights of freedom of speech and religion?
It does. Those are both in the First Amendment. There are some other things in there too. You can peacefully assemble. You can protest. There's the fifth one too that's not coming to my mind right now. But yeah, it definitely does those two things. Any other ones that you definitely know of? Anyone know what the Second Amendment does? I know you guys know. Looks like I got it in the chat. The right to bear arms. You're correct, Kaylin. Yeah, so that one's part of it. The Fifth Amendment, the right to not incriminate yourself. So essentially, if police want to talk to you about stuff, you don't have to talk to them. There are a ton of rights that it gives you. There are also a ton of rights that it does not give you, but I guess we'll get into that. So I think you all should have you got that PDF I shared with you, correct? Am I correct in assuming that? Yes, hopefully. So I'm going to assign you all a role. So what I'm going to do now I'm going to give you, get back to it. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do a couple of things. So let me share this really quick. So I want you to read through your role, whichever one I assign to you. You don't necessarily have to do anything with a partner just at this moment. So read through the role that you're assigned. It's got some questions at the bottom. You don't have to answer them. But what you do have to do is this. You are going to write just a short interior monologue about the person you're representing. So each of you is reading about, it's a fake person, but it's a person that has real problems that would have been happening in the 1780s, which is when the Constitution was written. I want you to make up a name for the person. I want you to talk about what your life is like, what are your hopes and fears going into the Constitutional Convention. So if you didn't know, just because I don't think I mentioned it here, the Constitutional Convention, we had an initial form of government called the Articles of Confederation. And you guys read about this. We decided it didn't work. We decided to make a new government. So in this role play, all these different groups of people are meeting to establish this new constitution. So what are your person's hopes and fears? You can look at those questions at the bottom of the sheet that you're reading. And then, yeah, so 75 words, that's just like a nice solid paragraph. And this isn't necessarily something that you have to turn into me, but it is something that I want you to do so you can kind of like get in the headspace of the person that you're going to be representing at this convention. So take about, like I said, 10 minutes to read through that and to write your little monologue, and then we'll get back together. So I'll leave you to it. So that's 10 minutes. So what we're going to do now, just for the next 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes, I'm going to split you out into rooms with the person that you're working with. And I just want you to kind of talk about what you wrote. Like, what do you think the character's concerned about? How do you feel about how this person feels about the convention? If you just want to read what you wrote, that's fine. If you want to talk in a little more depth, that's cool too. Because eventually today, what we're going to get to is kind of planning for what this person's going to want during the Constitutional Convention. Everybody should be back. All right, so I'm going to have you guys kind of work with that person in just a second. But before we do, I'm going to talk about one more thing. Or really 2 more things, but I'll try to be fast. Representatives from all the states, except one, are meeting to decide upon a new constitution. The one that's not meeting is Rhode Island, if you care. This is the Constitutional Convention. You will deal with important issues that face the country. These are real issues that were really a problem in the 1780s. This was real stuff that people had to decide about. For each issue, you must have a position. Some issues you will feel strongly about. It says to put an asterisk. You really can't do that. So you just want to make note of the issues that your person that you're characterizing is going to care about the most. Next to each of those. Other issues you will not feel strongly about. In the dealing session, which I think we're going to do tomorrow, I might push it back to Wednesday, but I'm pretty sure we're going to do it tomorrow. These will be the issues to give and take on. So the idea is that you're going to make proposals. You're going to make laws for each issue. Tomorrow, or whenever we do this dealing session, I'm planning on it being tomorrow, you're going to talk with other groups and maybe negotiate. So like if you're, let's say you are an enslaved person, I'd say your top priority is going to make sure that you're free. So you definitely want that to be the case. You might be able to like help someone else out. Like you might not care about something like payment in kind, but you might could help a group out that does in exchange for them voting for your proposal about, being free. So we're going to look through each of these things, and tomorrow we'll have a chance to deal. Today, after I read through this, I'm going to let you work with your partner and kind of make up proposals for each thing. I'm not going to keep you guys on here forever, but I'm going to give you some time to work. So we're going to go through these really quickly. Slavery is now legal in some states. Should it continue to be legal in any of the United States? So at this point, slavery is pretty much legal everywhere. Do we want to continue for that to be the case? Obviously, if we're talking about us in modern times, no, it's horrible. But you as the person that you're representing, do you think it should be legal in the United States? B, enslaved people are still brought into southern states like Virginia and South Carolina from outside the country to be sold to white plantation owners. Should the Constitution to continue to allow this trade in enslaved human beings? So not only should we decide about slavery, but should we also let people continue to be bought and sold from overseas into the United States? C, sometimes enslaved people flee their owners in the South and come north. Should Northerners be forced to turn over people who have escaped slavery to their owners? So this one's kind of tricky. I mean, not obviously not in modern times, but then because, you know, when you think about natural rights, everyone has the right to be free, right? That's something that everyone agreed on. But everyone also agreed that people have a right to own property. So this is a real issue at the time. Some people are going to argue that slaves are property, they should be returned. Some people are going to argue that these are people and liberty is a natural right that everyone should have. 2, some state legislatures have passed laws allowing debtors, that's people who owe money, to pay their debts in kind with cows, pigs, tobacco, corn, etc. This is a traditional method of payment or paying debts in some parts of the country. Should the federal government continue to allow this practice? So this would mean if you had a debt and you wanted to pay it, you could pay it in corn as long as that corn was worth the debt that you owed. Some of you are probably going to want money in cash. Others of you will probably want to continue to pay in kind. 3, many bonds were issued during the Revolution by the Continental Congress to pay soldiers and lenders. Does everyone know what a bond is, or does anyone not know what a bond is? Everyone knows? So like just in case you don't, because I can't see you, so I can't see if you're confused or very confident. A bond is like a lot like a loan. The idea is that like someone could invest and buy a bond. So let's say they spent $10 and bought a bond. The idea would be that at some point you could come back with your bond and say, give me my $10 back plus the interest that I've earned on the bond. So the idea now is like, this is a new government. The old government issued those bonds and wasn't able to pay them back to people. So should the new government have to pay the bonds that the old government issued? And a lot of you are some of you got bonds, some of your characters got bonds, but you know, got desperate, needed the money and sold them. So now you don't have the bonds anymore. And there are those of you out there that have bought up a lot of bonds in anticipation that eventually they'll get paid back and you'll make a lot of money. So you bought them for cheap and then you're wanting the full thing back. So should the bonds be paid back in full? Should they just be a small amount for each dollar? Should they just be paid back to those who they were originally issued to? Or should they not be paid back at all since this is a new government? And then finally, currently there's no national law determining who should be allowed to vote in elections. Some states require people to own a certain amount of property to vote. Only one state, New Jersey, allows women to vote. In most states, black people may not vote even if they are free. Who should be allowed to vote in the general elections? So these are the questions now. You need to have a position on each of them. I don't want to keep you guys here for more than like 55 minutes because that's what my normal class times are. So we've got, if I'm doing it like that, we've got about 13 minutes. So I'd like you now to just like, I'm going to put you back into groups. I'm going to give you time to work, to talk these issues out through the lens of the person that you are representing. So if you're a farmer, you're looking at it through that kind of lens. So we'll go back to breakout rooms. I'll give you some time to work together. And I might end up letting you guys work a little bit together on this tomorrow too, but that's the idea. So